This week is on the Bird's Nest. We have the results for this past week's events, a big change in the weather, and some more viewer-submitted questions. I'm Bryce, and if you're new here, we cover all things fishing, from products and services that can improve your skill or enjoyment of the sport to the current news coming out of the fishing industry. If this sounds like something that interests you, please hit the subscribe button, as it really helps the channel out. The biggest national championship tournament for kayak anglers has wrapped up, and the KBF has new champions crowned for the 2022 season. Anglers battled it out on Kentucky Lake over the course of several days before the winners were determined. The Top Team Cup features sponsors and KBF partners who field teams of 4 anglers, and each angler submits their best fish of each day for the course of 2 days, with the team having the 8 best fish win in the event. Last year, Team Dakota Lithium brought in the trophy, and they would follow up again with a second consecutive win. Team Dakota Lithium comprised of Cody Milton, Eric Siddiqui, Russ Snyders, and Grant Wade. The team pulled in 81 and 3/4 inches day 1 and 71 and a half inches on day 2 for an overall total of 153 and a quarter inches. Team Yak Attack would take second place with a whopping 24 and a half inches behind the champions and only 5 3/4 inches over third place team VMM Bazita Realty. The KBF Challenge Series would feature anglers that competed all year long in their respective states in the months-long online format. Anglers in the Challenge Series championships would be heading into the 2-day tournament carrying the points they competed for all year, with the angler finishing with the most points coming out as the champion. This year, Russ Snyders took the honors with 190 inches over the 2 days. He was followed by Cody Milton in second place with 170 and a quarter inches, and third place, Drew Gregory, with 166 and a half inches. For the win, Snyder has punched his ticket to the 2023 The 10. Our 3 finishers for the Challenge Series would also take the exact same positions in the Trail Series Championship. For the KBF National Championships, it would take place over 3 days, and again, Russ Snyders would come out on top with 282 inches. Second place would be Eric Jackson with 259 inches, and third place with 248 and 3/4 inches was Cody Milton. Clearly, Snyders was on his game this past week and took home a lot of hardware and a ton of cash. The complete winnings by Snyder hasn't been released yet, but one can only assume it will be a significant amount. If you recall from last week, we touched on the protest against Drew Gregory after his win on Lake Pickwick. To date, no word has come from Bassmasters, and through exhaustive searches, no additional information has been found concerning the protest. With a lack of an update, one can only assume one of 2 things. One is that there is some credit to the protest, and Bassmasters is trying to figure out how a disqualification will be perceived in the kayak fishing community, or second, Gregory's win stands. Personally, by the lack of information and the silence on the matter from Bassmasters, I believe this is a non-issue, and Drew Gregory will remain the champion and the winner of the 2022 Old Town Angler of the Year. The only other national level news coming out of the industry was the impressive win at the St. Croix Bassmasters Central Open by Keith Combs with a total bag over 3 days of 46.5 pounds. The win secured Combs' position in the Bassmaster Classic, and the roughly $44,000 he won isn't too bad either. Back in our local region, Yakka Bass held their Tournament of Champions at Lake Berryessa. As of right now, the results still have not been published, but when they do, we'll be sure to bring them to you. Fishing for this week seems to be very rare, with only one event taking place. The new Gin Bass Pro-Am TOC will be happening at Lake Shasta out of Bridge Bay Marina. With the lack of events this week, now would be a great time to complete some maintenance or upgrades to your boat or kayak, or just get out and do some stress-free fishing with the current cold front coming in the area, which we'll cover in our weather segment. This week's joke is a doozy. Why do vegans go fishing? Just for the halibut. This one was particularly funny for me, as I go fishing with my father all the time, who just so happens to be a vegan. Granted, he never catches anything, even though he is the one who taught me how to fish. The weather this week is going to be a cool one. The highs across the region will generally be in the low 70s, with overnight lows in the low 40s. A majority of the week will be partly cloudy to overcast, with, of course, no chance of rain. The wind will also be a constant present, generally light, under 10 miles per hour. This will remain a great time to throw some topwater baits. With the weather and the cloud cover, I would also say now is the best time to start throwing the smaller to medium-sized swim baits and spinner baits. We aren't quite there yet for the big swim baits, but that period is quickly approaching. For our product highlight this week, I don't have a specific product, but rather a manufacturer and retailer. I believe most anglers have at least heard of Piscifun before, but I don't think many people, especially those that are in my circles, have actually used any of their products. I've been using the Piscifun sun gloves, a hat, and a few of their shirts for the past several years, and I have nothing but good things to say about them. I have not used any of their tackle, rods, reels, or equipment, but I will be correcting that in the coming months. I thoroughly encourage anyone to give their products a try. Their products are high quality at a reasonable price. You can find a link in the description as well as any discount codes to their online storefront. Now, again, we come into my favorite segment of the show with the viewer submitted questions. Of course, we have the best 5 questions of the week for you. Our first question asks, why is it a bad idea to cut your line rather than to continue to pull on it until it breaks if you are snagged? From the question itself, I feel as if this viewer has been told by someone before that cutting your line is bad in some sort of way. So let's begin to break down this answer, as it's not just a simple answer. I have to start off by saying that I believe most professional anglers, or even your high-level weekend anglers, don't get hung up that often. I attribute that to not only their skill, but knowing the bottom composition through the use of their electronics. Professionals simply know what baits they can throw on a rocky bottom, into hard cover, or into thick weeds. Knowing this greatly reduces the likelihood of getting snagged. In the rare instance that I get snagged or hung up, I personally have a very good idea of what I'm hung up on and in which direction I need to go to get my bait free. This makes it easier for me to maneuver my boat or kayak to free my line. If I reach the point to where I know I am not going to get my line free, I never just pull my line until it snaps. I think that this is a terrible idea for multiple reasons. First, you increase the risk of snapping your rod, especially if you're using a manufactured rod with braid. Second, doing that can create an instance of losing your footing inside the boat or upsetting your kayak too much, or even losing additional equipment during the process. I truly feel the best thing to do if you know there is zero chance of retrieval is to release some line so it is not taut and simply use your tools to cut the line. This is the safest way, with the added benefit of having a fresh and clean cut at the end of your line, which always makes retying your line an easier affair. The second question is about harvesting a fish and asks, can you clean a fish after you catch it, or must you wait until you get home? While I'm not an expert at all 50 states, I do believe that they all have the same rule when it comes to harvesting a catch. You simply can't harvest a catch on the boat in the water, as you would be in violation of the regulation, but this also makes identification and measurement of the fish impossible if you do happen to be inspected by a game warden. With that being said, you don't have to wait until you get home, as that's not the only option. When I catch salmon, I tend to open them up to bleed them out upon catching them. This leaves them intact for identification as well as complete for measuring. So if I am inspected, I should be okay. Many lakes and rivers also have fish cleaning stations that you can use before heading home as well. The key is remembering that you are no longer on the water and you're no longer fishing. The next question is, are kayaks actually safe for fishing? The sarcastic person in me would immediately respond with, is anything we do safe? I think everything depends on the individual. As a whole, kayaks are extremely safe, and if they weren't, then businesses like Hobie, Old Town, Jackson, and others wouldn't spend the millions of dollars researching and producing amazing watercraft for anglers to use. I believe when an unsafe knucklehead or someone who is under the influence of alcohol or drugs is on a kayak, then of course it's unsafe. But I'd venture to say this individual would be unsafe no matter what vessel that person was on, whether it be a boat, skateboard, rollerblades, or even a car. The best advice I can give is not to use any substances while on the water and to wear your PFD. Our third question for the week asks, would you recommend a paddle kayak or a pedal kayak for fishing? I personally lean more towards a motor, but that's not always in the cards for everyone. Between the two, I think a pedal drive is far superior. I personally have not seen anyone fishing in any sort of competitive nature using a paddle unless their drive was broken. I just think it would be too hard to fish and to use a paddle at the same time. I imagine it would be overwhelming. However, if you're not in a position to be able to afford a pedal kayak, then a paddle kayak will work just great. Our next question is, do you need lessons to know how to kayak? I would say no, not really. I think a few lessons to learn how to tie a kayak down, transport it, and launch it may be beneficial, but as far as actually using a kayak, I'd say no. Of course, you can always learn the many different strokes to use with a paddle, but that's not necessary, and kayaking itself is really just self-explanatory. But let me add a clarifying statement. I mean this with regards to kayaks for fishing. If you're trying to go extreme whitewater kayaking or in the ocean in a sit-in kayak, then yes, lessons are probably worth it, as the risk of going into the drink with a fishing kayak is relatively low compared to a sit-in kayak. Our final question for the week is, what should the penalty be for those two that were caught cheating in the walleye tournament? This has been something that we have covered for the past few weeks. Due to the sheer public nature of what happened, I think this will be around for a while until there's at least a final resolution. But I think the two cheats are getting what they deserve. On the fishing aspect, I believe that they should be barred from ever fishing or hunting again. On the criminal side of things, it's not really for us to decide. They have been charged with crimes that they committed, so now they're in the hands of the prosecutor and the jury, who will ultimately determine their fate. This week's fishing tip follows up from last week's video that we did regarding the Angler app. If you haven't watched it, it will be right up here in the cards. The best tip I can provide to you is to use Angler or another logbook to develop your patterns and history. This will ultimately provide you with the best information for a given body of water. This week at Black Widow, we'll be hopefully doing some fishing. I'll show you a build and installation of a Yak Attack Black Pack Pro. The new Monster Bass box will be unboxed, and possibly we'll get to the Tourney X app. And of course, we will do our Tackle Tip Tuesday. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We currently have 41 subscribers and only need 9 additional ones before we send out a free sticker pack. Additionally, we only need 59 more subscribers before we can give away a free Monster Bass box. So that's all for now. Catch you next time.